My name is Maria, and this is the story of how I was broken, abandoned, and forgotten, and how I rose again, not as someone's mistake, but as my own miracle. I was born in a small village surrounded by green fields and brown huts. Life there was simple, too simple sometimes. The people were poor, but their tongues were rich with gossip. Dreams were considered foolish there, especially for girls like me. My father had died when I was a child. My mother spent her days bent over in the fields, her hands calloused, her back always aching. I used to help her after school, carrying bundles of grass, washing utensils, sometimes cooking rice over a small fire. But still, even with all the hardship, my mother used to say, "Maria, study hard. One day, you'll become someone this village will have to respect." I believed her. I believed the power of words, of hard work, and of love. But I was only 18 when life taught me that love could destroy you faster than anything else. It started so innocently. He was from our village, a charming young man who knew exactly what to say. He spoke to me softly, with words no one had ever said to me before. He told me I was beautiful, that my eyes were like monsoon clouds, that he wanted to marry me. And I, foolish, innocent, hopeful, believed him. We would meet secretly by the river after sunset. I would bring him guavas from my tree, and he would bring me stolen bangles from the fair. The sound of them on my wrist made me blush. He said, "One day I'll put gold ones there, Maria. You'll be mine." But that day never came. When I told him I was pregnant, I expected shock. But not the kind I saw in his eyes. It was the look of a coward. He laughed nervously at first, then grew silent. A few days later, he was gone. Vanished. He didn't even come to say goodbye. When the village found out, everything changed. The same mouths that once smiled at me began to spit poison. Shameless girl, she trapped him. Her mother didn't raise her well. Even my mother's eyes lost their warmth. She didn't hit me, she didn't shout. But the silence between us screamed louder than any words one night. I couldn't take it anymore. I packed my clothes in a torn bag, tied it with a rope, and left. The moon followed me as I walked barefoot down the dusty road, tears and sweat mixing on my face. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay. When I reached the city, I was hungry, scared, and alone. I slept under a bus stop for 2 nights, clutching my belly and praying for strength. People passed by, some stared, some looked away. No one stopped, until one morning an old man did. He was tall, thin, with kind eyes and a white beard. He wore a simple kurta and carried a small bag of fruits. He stopped in front of me and asked softly, "Beta, how long have you been sitting here?" I didn't answer. I was too scared to trust anyone again. He sat beside me on the bench and said, "You don't have to tell me anything. Just come home. You look hungry." Was something in his voice, calm, safe, like the sound of rain after a drought. I followed him. His name was Mr. Mera. He lived alone in a small, tidy house in the old part of the city. His wife had died years ago, and his children lived abroad. "I know what loneliness feels like," he told me. "You can stay here until you figure things out." I did. He gave me a room, food, and more than that, kindness. For the first time in months, I slept peacefully. A few weeks later, I gave birth to a baby girl. I named her Asha, which means hope, because that's what she was, my hope when everything else was gone. I still remember the first time I held her. Her tiny fingers curled around mine, and in that moment, I made a promise. I will never let you suffer for my mistakes, Asha. You will never be ashamed of me. Mara helped me register for evening classes. It's never too late to learn, he said at first. It was difficult. I hadn't studied in years. I would put Asha to sleep, wash dishes, then sit under the dim light and memorize textbooks. Some nights I cried out of exhaustion, but every time I felt like giving up, I would look at her sleeping peacefully beside me, and I would find my reason to keep going slowly. Things started changing. I passed my exams. Then I cleared my graduation. Mr. Mara was the one who filled out the IAS exam form for me. I laughed when he told me, Maria, you have it in you. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Exam was tough, the toughest thing I had ever done. But by then, I had already learned how to fight. I wasn't just studying for myself anymore. I was studying to silence every whisper that had once called me a disgrace. 2 years later, I stood before the mirror, wearing a crisp white sari, my IAS badge pinned proudly on my chest. I looked at my reflection and whispered, we did it, Asha. She was 7 by then, bright, playful, and full of questions. She didn't know much about my past. To her, I was just her mother, the woman who cooked her favorite paradas, braided her hair, and dropped her off at school. And that was enough. Life had finally found its rhythm again. Until one day I saw him. It was a government event in my district. I was there to oversee a project. When I turned around, I froze. There he was, the man who had once promised me gold bangles, now standing in front of me, older, thinner, with guilt in his eyes. For a second, I couldn't breathe. The memories rushed back, the river, the whispers, the pain. He walked closer, voice trembling. Maria, I heard about you. You're an IAS officer now. I'm sorry. I stared at him. Sorry. The word that once could have healed me now felt meaningless. He continued. I was young, scared. I made a mistake. Can we start again? Stop. My voice came out sharper than I intended. I took a deep breath and said, you didn't just leave me. You left us. You left when I needed you the most. And now that I've built a life without you, you come back. For what? To ruin it again. He looked down, unable to meet my eyes. I stepped closer, not with anger, but with the calmness of someone who had survived fire and learned to dance in the ashes. The girl you loved is gone, I said. The woman standing before you doesn't need you anymore. Then I turned around and walked away. That night, I went home and found Asha drawing on the floor. She looked up and smiled. Mama, look. I made you. She had drawn 2 stick figures, one tall, one small, holding hands under a big yellow sun. I laughed through my tears and hugged her tight. Because in that moment, I realized something. I had lost everything once, but life had given me something far more precious in return. Not revenge, not regret, but peace. People often ask me how I survived it all, how I went from being a pregnant outcast to an IAS officer. The truth is, I didn't do it alone. There was always someone watching over me, my mother's prayers, Mr. Mara's kindness, my daughter's love. And there was me, the version of myself that refused to die, even when the world tried to bury her. I sometimes go back to my village now. The same people who once whispered behind my back now look at me with respect. They say, Maria Bidia has made us proud. I smile politely, but inside, I know my victory isn't theirs to claim. It belongs to the girl who walked barefoot into a city one night with nothing but tears in her eyes and hope in her heart. Asha often asks me, Mama, will I ever meet my father? I always smile and say, you already have the best one, Mr. Mera. She calls him Dadu, and he loves her as if she were his own grandchild. Sometimes I sit on the balcony and watch them play, her laughter echoing through the house, his wrinkled face glowing with joy. And I realize family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's love that chooses you when the world throws you away. Now, whenever I stand on a stage and give motivational talks to young girls, I tell them, don't ever let someone's mistake define your destiny. Don't let their cruelty become your identity. You are stronger than your past. You just have to believe it before anyone else does. When I look back, I no longer feel anger, only gratitude, because every wound carved the woman I am today. If I hadn't been broken, I wouldn't have learned how to rebuild. If I hadn't been abandoned, I wouldn't have learned how to stand alone. And if I hadn't lost everything, I wouldn't have found myself. So yes, my name is Maria. Once, I was a scared village girl with a broken heart. Now, I'm an IAS officer, a mother, and a survivor. And if you ever meet me walking down the street with my daughter holding my hand and my head held high, you'll see not the girl who was left behind, but the woman who rose again. Because I am living proof that even the smallest seed can grow through concrete if it just keeps reaching for the light.